Good morning and afternoon. It's Wednesday, 9 a.m. Pacific. Welcome all to the show. I'm Kane, and I'm joined today with David, better known as the Workday Sharing Guy, Denise, Logan, and special guests.
Thank you, Kane. Can you tell me the most important thing about Zoom chat?
The single most important thing about Zoom chat is everyone should be using it to communicate with us on the show today, and make sure you select all attendees, all panelists and attendees, so that everybody on the show will see what you're chatting about, or your question, or your response to somebody. So we have a very packed show today again, and let's get started and pass it over to you guys.
Thanks, Kane. We're going to go ahead and start with our Kahoot this morning. So if you'll go ahead and open kahoot.it on any browser.
All right, for those who are first time coming to the sharing show, any browser, your phone, a computer, and the web page is kahoot.it.
All right, our pin for this morning is 6619-130. So 6619130. We'll have 4 questions this morning. The first 3 are surveys, and then the last one will be a quiz question. What is your favorite type of sharing event? Red, the sharing show; blue, pre-rising share-a-thons; yellow, remote share-a-thons; or green, I don't share, I hoard.
I am curious to see how much green there is. Well, same as yellow.
All right, here's our second question. How long have you been doing Workday? Under 1 year, 1 to 3 years, 4 to 7 years, or over 7 years?
Wow, that's very close, almost a 4-way split, but 1 to 3 years is the most, and 4 to 7 is the next most. All right, favorite thing about optimized for performance checkbox. It shows up on a report. When you create a report, there's this optimized for performance checkbox. It's checked. So your favorite part is red, checked by default, or blue, that the name is so clear, or yellow, that it highlights performance, or green, none of these are your favorite part about that checkbox. Okay, so more than half, maybe they have some other favorite about that. It sure surprised me when it came up and I had to uncheck it. Very interesting. Okay, the final question is actually a quiz. There is one right answer. What does this icon mean on the CRF? I know it's all fuzzy because we zoomed into it, but not that many people know what that is, I don't think. So what is that? Is that a single instance? Is it a one-to-one relationship? Is it self-referencing, or is it a lunar eclipse? There you see the sun coming between the moon and the earth. Okay, a lot of people do know that it's not a lunar eclipse, and it is self-referencing icon, right? It's the single instance and the one-to-one relationship. That looks like a teaspoon. We typically call it a teaspoon. Okay, thank you, everybody. Let's go back to the show.
All right, up next we have David, the sharing guy.
Okay, so hello, everybody. So I'm David, the sharing guy. I am not an active Workday employee. I used to be. I was hired back in 2007. I was employee 149. It's very important here that I let everybody know that I do not represent Workday. I used to work at Workday. I wrote a lot of the training classes, share-a-thons, and the sharing show. This is all knowledge sharing. This is not training. I highly recommend the Workday training. I've realized as I've spent a whole year now with this fantastic team on the sharing show that I'm on a mission to help as many Workday customers as possible. And even though it seems like mission accomplished, there's still more. In particular, calc fields is an area where we have a lot of people signing up for the calc field share-a-thons. So we do have a calc field share-a-thon. We had one February 10th. There's another one called Demystify Calc Fields. It's for the beginner level, here coming up very quickly here on the 27th of February. And I know that some of you are just thinking that, you know, you can't wait for that. Well, we are in the middle of doing a couple of weeks of workshops, which are Tuesdays and Thursdays. Middle means we're almost done with the advanced, but we will pick up these workshops again in March. And so if you're interested in workshops, contact Denise for that. And that is my disclaimer.
Thanks, David. Next on the agenda, we have updates on some sharing events. Today, the 19th of February, of course, we have our sharing show. 1 week from tomorrow, on the 27th of February, as David just mentioned, we have Demystify Calc Fields Share-a-thon. And then the first Wednesday in March, we are back with the sharing show. The third Wednesday in March, the sharing show is going to take a break. And instead, we're going to have a calc field sort of Q&A. Well, actually, maybe not Q&A, Q and chat. So you'll have a chance to enter your questions and chat and interact. And then first Wednesday in April, we're going to be back with the sharing show. So you can contact David or Denise for calc field details on the share-a-thons or the workshops, any information that you need.
Yeah, and this is showing in the first 3 weeks of March. We're going to go through the sequence again: beginner, intermediate, and advanced. So reach out to us if you're particularly interested in calc fields. And this show we have, this is really a theme of the show, is calculated fields.
Thanks, David. You can also join the LinkedIn group for updates. If you find Denise on LinkedIn, you can join the group, and that will give you all the information that you need on share-a-thons and workshops and whatever else you might need. You can find updates on community. And next up, we have David with a smashing calc field pattern.
Okay, so this smashing pattern is just like a very common one. I'm just going to go back here to make sure people see this. This is recently updated, and this is on community. It's where all the sharing events are being announced, and there was a reference here to all of you curious as to what is it about Charlie Brown or Linus that has anything to do with understanding calc fields. So you see on the top here, this is a TFC is a true-false condition. ESI is extract single instance, and LRV is a lookup related value. So let's go through what I'm calling the Great Pumpkin example, as in the Great Pumpkin. So here's a pumpkin patch. Now, you got to imagine that all these pumpkins are employees, if you like, or you could imagine them as expense lines in an expense report, or depending on which area of Workday, maybe these are candidates, right? But it's just a bunch of objects, right? So let's say we're going to pick one, just one, and say we want the biggest one, right? So how would we get the biggest pumpkin? Okay, so now imagine this pumpkin. It's a business object, and it has a location, and it has a shape, and it has a weight, and it has a price, and it has a color. And so let's change it slightly. Let's not just say we want the biggest one. Let's get the biggest non-green pumpkin, or one that doesn't have green on it. So this is a true-false condition. And these icons showing on the right are these icons, like the self-referencing one we saw earlier. A TF is for a true-false. And you see here, I drew a red box around pumpkins that have green on them. So you would first create a true-false condition if you want to get the largest non-green pumpkin. So you probably have a true-false that actually is the opposite. I just didn't want to draw a red box around all the others. But essentially, every pumpkin that's not green is in the running. And then once you have all of those pumpkins, the ones that aren't green, you could then sort these. And that's the important thing about an extract single instance. So quite often you're creating a true-false condition first. Workday might already have that true-false condition for you. In the case of pumpkins being green or not, I can tell you for sure Workday doesn't have that one. But there are others in the system that might be true-false values that Workday delivered. Otherwise, you create your own and then you sort these. And in this case, we're sorting by size. One good question for you who trying to like really grasp calc fields is, what can you sort by? It turns out you can sort by everything in Workday except for that back massager. You cannot sort by a multiple instance. It doesn't make sense, but you could sort by text, of course, and numbers and currency and dates. You could even sort by Boolean. That one I'm not so sure makes sense, but for sure sorting by multi-instance doesn't make sense. So the sequence here is you do a true false condition and you use that to take out all the green pumpkins, and then you sort, and you sort by some field. You might have to create one, but very likely it's already in there for you. There's also a different calc field called extract multiple instance. So imagine again, we have a whole bunch of workers or objects, let's say they're pumpkins, and we want to pick only the white pumpkin. So once again, we're creating a true false condition, and it gives us another back massager. I show the picture of one that's a little bit smaller, right? It's a subset of the group. So it's similar to an extract single instance, but there's no longer a sort where you pick the biggest or the youngest or the oldest or the person who's paid the most or the candidate who's applied to the most jobs or something like that. There's no longer a sort anymore.
Thanks, David. That's fantastic. What do we have up next on the agenda?
Up next, we have Indy from Texas with a Fin calc field example.
Yep.
Okay.
Thank you, Denise and Logan.
Yes. Hi, Andy.
Hi. So continuing with the ESI, extract single instance example that David was talking about earlier, we have an example related to Workday financials. So in this example, the use case or the business case is that we have multiple expense report lines, and we're auditing the expense reports, and we would like to extract out the most expensive meal item out of all the expense reports. So the first item that we did was wrote a calculated field. That's a true false condition where we're evaluating whether the item expense report lines as a meals item or not, because we may have multiple items or expense report lines. We would like to extract out meals only. So here's the calculated field just related to the meals.
Yeah, and I'm going to show this, Indy, that the object is expense report line, and the word here, meals, is similar to saying green for pumpkins. Not like
Right.
I have to always come back pumpkins, but that's a value that you wanted to pick out or to isolate.
Yep. So once we have done the condition of true false condition, we have an item which is meals only from the previous calculated fields. So here's the example for the extract single instance. We are using the business object of expense report here, and with the details at the bottom, the source field is the expense report lines. The related business object is the expense report lines as well, and the condition is the true false calculated fields that we had created earlier in the previous window. And we're sorting this by the expense line reimbursement amount. So that's the field we would like to use. And the condition is that we would like, can you go back to, yep. The reason we would like to have it in descending order, because we would like to have the highest amount sorted out, and we would like to pick out the first occurrence from the instance to be returned. So I think we got everything there. And the next item is that we would like to write a report to extract this out. So simple advanced report where we're picking out our business object expense report and the data source expense report for a company. And the fields we're using here is the calculated field we created earlier. And then we're extracting out the amount for the base currency. And we could use a filter here as well if you have set of criteria for the expense reports, but this is how you would write your report by using that calculated field.
Thank you so much, Indy. That was great. What do we have up next on the agenda?
Thank you.
Thanks, Indy. Now we have Joanna from Wisconsin with an ask about our BOs and BOs.
Hello. So our business wanted a more specific field on this vault report here in order to clarify that the report output was giving them the details that they needed. So in this example, you can see from this yellow arrow that they showed a very similar output called change benefits for open enrollment. Based on the report's primary business object of enrollment event, I was able to pull in a field called enrollment type, and based on the yellow arrow here, we could see that that output was more specific and met their needs by giving them multiple types so that they could see where this event was being enrolled from. Oftentimes, I use the workers business process to see what the field is called that I want to return the output for, and I use the related action to the report field and values. So here, we're going to zoom in on the left side of the next screen to show you more details about how I was able to decide which of those two open enrollment events I wanted to pull in. But those were the fields then that were accessible to me on the report. Here on the left side, if we zoom in on this one, the left side here, the yellow arrow is showing me there were two fields that were returning a value I wanted to use or I could use. The related business object showed that the benefit event type is an object on my enrollment event, the business object, and it links to these fields and to the benefit event type. If we go to the right side of the zoomed in screen, my ask is how are other individuals using the business objects that have links from their business object?
Okay, I'm going to add something here, Joanna. Thank you for your ask. Right, so your ask is as well a share. Some people might have picked up something and learned something as you were asking your question. The right side of this screen, I've been thinking about this, knowing that you are going to ask this question. So the chat is open. So the idea here is similar to what we're going to do when the sharing show takes a break in the middle of March. We'll instead of a Q&A, this is a Q and chat. So anyone who wants to ask a question about calc fields in the middle of March will take the same time, and instead of it being the sharing show, it'll be a Q, a question and answer is really a question and chat. So the discussion could continue here in the chat. My answer for you, Joanna, is the left side. I'm going to go back to the previous. The previous one shows you all the objects that this points to. And that's if you're starting here and you want to head a certain direction. But sometimes you want to end up here and you're coming from somewhere else. And that's the right side. And the example I have is when my daughter and I go to our favorite pancake house, they give us kind of like a kid's menu with crayons. She's a little bit older now, but it's still there. And have you ever done a maze where there's an entrance and you're trying to get to the gold or the center, or, the target? Have you ever actually started at the target and gone back the other way? That's my answer as to how it's useful. Now, I know that's not very specific, but it's a little bit better than talking to you about pumpkins. So
Thank you.
thank you again, Joanna.
Thanks, Joanna, and thanks, David, for that ad. What do we have up next on our agenda?
Up next, we have Cece from Virginia with an ask about learning calc field functions.
This is Cece, and I've been using Workday since October as an employee, and January 21st of this year is when my sections actually launched. And on this screen, the first screen that you're seeing now, this is where I start when I want to create a calculated field. And on this screen, you actually see the different options that the business objects that come up as options for me to choose. And this is when I'm trying to create something for learning. And on this, on the next screen, you will see the option to add some functions. And my question is, as I said, I'm very new in this. So I would like to know, as you can see on this screenshot right here, this is where I was actually able to create a calculated field using the lookup related value. And I did this with some assistance from a colleague. But my question is, how do I even know where to start? For example, how do I know what business object to choose, which function to choose when starting to create a calculated field? I don't know if any of you have any resources that you've used or if you actually went to like calculated field or reporting training.
All right, so we'll move this to the chat. Thank you, Cece. I'm going to go back to this. That shows that you've already entered the business object, and then you're looking at functions. And I'm going to point out something here, Cece, that since you're in your first year and first few months of Workday, and maybe even first month actually, you don't always have to fill out the screen in Workday. The red asterisk tells you that it's required, but you don't have to go top down. You could go from the bottom up. And I'm going to claim that most people in their head, they're already thinking of the function they need, or they already know the business object it needs to go on. And then you could put in the name last. Almost everyone I know goes from the top down. In the workshops, we go from the bottom up because you have to try to think of a name, and then in your head, you haven't yet clicked on what you're actually doing. So I know that's not a big hint for you, Cece, but it's a little bit in the direction of how to start approaching your question. Like, how do you even know which function and business object? So have open discussion in the chat, and we're ready to continue on.
Thank you so much, Cece. It's great to have questions. What do we have next on our agenda? Oh, and before you tell me what we have next, I just want to remind everyone, can you make sure when you chat that you chat to all panelists and attendees, because that's the only way everyone's going to get to interact. So make sure you reset the default to all panelists and attendees. Thanks. What do we have next? What do you got?
Thanks, Logan. Up next, we have David from California with what if your calc field isn't working?
Yeah, good. Okay, so this is the same David, of course, and there's CRFs, the fields that are on that could be go onto a report, and then there's calculated fields that you choose from CRFs. This is a picture of what seems like a working extract single instance. Again, this is the one where we have a true false value and then a sort. In this case, the true false value is just always true, because the sort is supposed to come up with the one that we want. The problem was, and this came up in the intermediate workshop, it wasn't working. And it's hard to know, like, why is it not working? The calculated field, I'm going to say the calculated field itself was right. What was wrong was that the sort field, it was the wrong field. It didn't return what the person thought it should return. So the calc field, the structure, the pattern was there. The question was, well, wait a minute, why isn't it working? It's, well, try instead of comp change effective date, try effective date. And it all happened live, and within 2 minutes, something that had taken perhaps hours of debugging all got fixed. So that's my story about knowing the difference between, are you selecting the right fields and understanding fields as compared to, do you actually understand calc fields? If you understand extract single instance, you're probably spending more of your time trying to figure out what's the right field. And I don't think of that as calc fields.
Thanks, David. And do you have anything to add about our new favorite checkbox?
Yeah, this favorite checkbox which we had, where more than half the people couldn't think of what their favorite part of this favorite checkbox is. So I think that what I wrote here in the report name is, where's my familiar report data source? It doesn't show up, and then you have to remember, oh, uncheck the box, right? And then when you uncheck the box, you get this alert message, kind of tells you, you know, look, this might not run as fast as if you had left it checked. But usually I'm just writing a report and I want to use the report data source I'm used to. So I'm interested if anyone in the chat has anything they would like to add about this fabulous new checkbox that's on by default on all reports when you create them.
Wonderful. And Denise, can you tell us a little bit more about the sharing dashboards?
Sure, Logan. So a lot of you have requested to join the dashboard. So this is what you'll see when you join. This is our dashboard of dashboards. We've added the ACA dashboard, which has some links from PowerPoints from that share-a-thon. We have added the 2020 R1 up here in the left-hand corner. That has a lot of updates and a lot of the new things that are coming, and it's being updated daily with stuff that comes out, which is awesome. And then we also have the calc field dashboard that a lot of you are familiar with. So we have a lot of shares on there. A lot of people are adding what some calc field shares, some calc field asks, and then people are answering those. So it's been great. And if you want access to it, please reach out to me and I will get that for you.
Okay, so now we have our final share here, Denise.
We do. So up next, we have our friend Marilyn from Calgary, who is infamous for binge watching all of our YouTube channel shows.
All right, Marilyn, tell us your story.
Hi, everybody. Yes, I'm guilty. I watched everything in about a day and a half. Last fall, actually. I started with my current company last July, and after I had been away from the Workday community for about 18 months, I was really struggling on trying to close the gap on any changes we had new things that had come up. And I stumbled across a post on community about the sharing show. And after I watched the first episode, I found it to be exactly what I was looking for. And the next thing I knew, I'd watched half of season 1. So the next day I thought, well, let's finish it off.
All right, thank you, Marilyn. So you went through practically all of season 1 in just 2 days, and that's just, it's fascinating for me that we have a binge watcher. And whenever I say a binge watcher singular, somebody said, well, as far as you know, right? So
Correct.
maybe there's others, but Marilyn, don't go anywhere because you're one of the several people who might be interested in this next item.
Okay.
And what is next on the agenda?
All right, up next, we're going to check in on our Workday Stock Challenge.
All right, so on the far right is the Movember team. That's Workday customers, friends, and alumni. And anyone who joined that got to pick 5 dates for when Workday would return to its $200 and at least a penny. And there's a whole story about this in season 1. If you're a binge watcher or you just go and find it, you'll know that we Workday crossed over $200 at one point during season 1. But then during Rising, there was this huge drop, and we started this contest. You win an Apple Watch if you knew when Workday would go over 200, if you guessed it correctly, not knew. And so take a look at where we were as of yesterday, right? So if we take this, and actually this morning, look at that, 199.99 cents. That was before the market opened today. And if you take a look, it's not really drawn to scale, but at the start of the day, it was so close. So now who picked today? Now, I had picked one of my favorite days is Anil's birthday. And it was close. It was within $2, but it didn't make it. So no watch for me and one other person. But guess what? It was today. So who won today? Denise, do you know who won?
I do. It's our friend Marilyn.
Marilyn, Marilyn, all that binge watching paid off. So
I guess so.
For the one binge watcher that we know of, she won an Apple Watch for guessing today. You're the only one who guessed today. So Denise will reach out to you and get that to you. So congratulations. We had mentioned it's raining Apple Watches. We're giving out several during this season too. That day is a special day for the sharing show. It's how the whole sharing show started, actually, with an I Love Workday photo contest. But here's a picture of the 2020 I Love Workday photo contest. So there's a ton of pictures here. You see a picture. This is on community. We're going to leave it open for a few more days. If you have an I Love Workday picture that you would like to add, even somebody here with a Safe Harbor Halloween costume. There's a picture of a whole city practically holding up their heart shapes from a Workday user group. And there's even a picture of Logan and Denise and myself with one of our favorite sharing fans, Doug.
That's great. It's time now to see who's going to make our podium. But first, let's have a word from our sponsor.
Today's episode is co-sponsored by Humanity. And Humanity is a Workday approved employee scheduling software. So thank you, Humanity.
Thank you, Humanity, for co-sponsoring, and Kane and Dovetail for co-sponsoring. And let's go into the Kahoot.
So you may need to refresh your browser for the kahoot.it, and we will have a new PIN number. You have right and wrong answers. Okay, so our pin is 2035513. 2035 513. Here we go.
All right, a true false condition. This is a calc field and it's used for ESI, but not EMI, extract single instance, but not extract multiple instance. Or it's used for extract multiple instance, but not extract single instance. Or it will return true or false. Or it will return true or false or undefined. One of these four is a true statement. Okay, most people know that it's true or false. There is no third option. All right, Jerome, you're on the top here. We have two more questions. Several people right behind you. A sort is needed for a true false condition calc field, an extract single instance calc field, an extract multiple instance calc field, a lookup related value calc field. Which one of these uses a sort? All right, a lot of people got that. Your speed at getting the answer is going to help move you up. Let's see who's in the lead. Jerome's still in the lead. 40 points behind is a general manager, and another 39 points, Charlene in third place. Bridget and Jill close behind. An ESI calc field will return one single instance always, one or more instances, one or zero single instances, zero or more instances. This is the third and final question of this quiz. What does an extract single instance return? I have a sense that I might have tricked a few people. Yeah, I tricked several people. A single instance doesn't always return a single instance. It's going to be one or zero. There might not be any. Right, so let's see now who of those five, the results. Alex C, congratulations. You're way ahead of Tracy in second place. And then Bren, you're close behind in third. Okay, let's thank everybody as we wrap up.
Well, thank you, David. Thank you, Denise, Logan, and special thank you to our guests for speaking on the show today. As always, we will publish this video onto our YouTube channel, so don't forget to head over there and subscribe, and also click on the notifications icon so you get notified when it lands on the channel. So as a reminder, we are not doing the open mic today, but we will be back in 2 weeks' time on the 4th of April. So everybody, all that's left to say is have a great work day.